Yeah. When I was looking for locations, there still is. There's a park not far away from where I live called the Time Landscape Park. In the summer, when all the flowers are in bloom, everything's green, all the trees are green. It's a really lush environment. And if you were to put a camera in the correct place, you wouldn't necessarily know that you're in Manhattan per se. It has a very, very interesting history. I passed there all the time, and I'd see this like an elderly lady tending the park. Her name is Wilhelmina Helmer, and I think a lot of people pass it and don't realize what it is. Ever since 1978, this strange little park that people walk by but don't really know, they just think there's plants in there. All these plants, you're not going to find. I mean, you'll find some obviously around Manhattan, but a lot of them all were around in the 17th century. There was this guy called Alan Sonfist. Back in the 70s, his idea was to create a park called the Time Landscape Park, which makes a lot of sense, in which all of the plants and vegetation of the 17th century, before the Danes, the Brits, everyone started to come to and change the face of Manhattan and build here. He wanted to capture that the 17th century foliage, put a fence around it, and show people what plants and trees were around prior to Manhattan becoming what it is today. And I believe in 1978, he sat down and he it was earlier than that, but it took them a while to do it because he worked with botanists from all over the world to collect all these plants and put them together, build the fence and then grow them. And in 1978, that's when it came to fruition. And they've been maintained by this wonderful German lady, Wilhelmina Helmer. She would tell me that some mornings she'd have to come in and people would throw in empty pizza boxes, empty cans of soda, beer, just throwing them over the railing into the park. I mean, it's like, what? Who are these bums? It's shocking. One day I talked to Wilhelmina and said, Wilhelmina, I said, look, I'd love to film in here. I'm trying to, she's an older woman, so trying to explain what I was trying to do and attempting to do was, I wasn't sure if she'd get it. And she did, and she was like, oh, I love that idea. Yep, okay. So she was like, I could give you the key. She goes, I'd have to cut you a key, but I would actually check in first and check in with Parks and Rec and see what the deal is. And and I'm always about doing things as legitimately as possible, because you don't want to cause anyone else aggravation or trouble, and you don't want trouble to fall on their heads or anything like that. That's not what I'm about. I just want to do the right thing. So I called them up, spoke with this guy. We have nothing in the computer or on paper telling us who is taking care of that park. So I'm like, damn. I'm like, how long has she been? How long has Wilhelmina been there? And they just kind of assume that it gets taken care of. He said, we have no idea who this person is, and she has a key. So it goes in and cleans the park up, and she must get a paycheck or something. So it's bizarre. So I go talk with her, and I said, Wilhelmina, I said, they have no clue that you're here doing this. I said, they have nothing on paper, nothing in the computer. What they're asking me to do is ask you if you can sign a piece of paper and give me your phone number, and I brought an outline of what I was just looking to do, that I wasn't going to disrupt the park, that I wasn't going to remove trees and all of this kind of stuff. Because I think also sometimes when you see you're going to shoot somewhere, people freak out because they're sort of like, whoa, what are you bringing in here? You're bringing in some giant cameras, like a crane and all this shit. And I'm like, trust me, I'm bringing in a Canon R6, a little gimbal, bunch of lights, you know, small lights. You're not even going to know that we were here when we leave. And I like to leave places cleaner than I find them. So, and that comes from being a chef for years, you know, especially when I was a private chef for 12 years. It's like, no, people are like, wow, it's cleaner than I left it. And I'm like, in some cases, it's like, yeah, a lot cleaner. I gave her this guy's number. She called, and it was tough. It was like 2 weeks of back and forth, trying to get them to have a conversation, catch one another, because she was always in the park. That tended to be where she always was. So I said, look, you know, I said, do you have like an answer machine? She's like, oh yeah, I have that. And I'm like, oh, okay, good. I said, because this guy's trying to call. I said, so, you know, if you can please, when you get a sec, call him back, and even if you leave a message. And I was kind of like the middle guy, so just trying to get them to connect, and they eventually did. I typed up another letter stipulating that, you know, this. I needed the key, and also that Park and Rex were cool with me doing this. You know, I signed it, she signed it, she gave me a copy of the key, and we just tried to work out when we could, you know, when I could get in there. And at the time, you know, a lot of changes occurred over the year and a half that we were doing this, but, you know, I was assisted by Gabe, who I've known for ages. He lives next door, and he was an assistant cameraman for many years. And so I was, Gabe came along, my wife Veronica, Alan Gary, and of course little Amelia. And that was the first day that we filmed. I took one corner of the apartment and dressed it like she was looking out a window, and it seems to work quite well. And she was very nervous, and it was tough getting, you know, without rehearsals, it's always tough to, you know, you have a window, she had a window, it was at night. You kind of ask a lot of people when they're doing it for practically, you know, nothing other than a sandwich and, you know, a hot cup of coffee or whatever. So, you know, we went in there and I shot what I could. And then a couple of nights later, I kept hold of the key. Then a few nights later, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go in there and get some B-roll, because it's really beautiful. And I noticed there were a lot of fireflies. Of course, when I actually turn up with the camera, I don't see anything. Like all the fireflies, I don't know where the heck they went. I was like, really? It was like the night before I'm in there, they're flying around everywhere when we're shooting, and I'm like, oh, it's really cool. You know, they're hard to capture, but it was just beautiful hanging out afterwards, talking in the park before we all went home. And the fireflies flying around. I'm like, I'm gonna come back here and I'm gonna shoot this. And then, you know, just get some B-roll, you know, just meandering, like the camera floating, you know, like it's Jenny walking, you know, and pushing past tree, you know, some of the branches, and, you know, just to give it a little more atmosphere. And when I was there doing that, I was like, right, I'm gonna go. I looked back on the footage and I saw that I didn't get quite what I wanted with some of the glowing berries, because I had to make those special effects. And I was like, shit, all right, I'm gonna go back. Stupidly, I didn't check the weather. I didn't check what the weather was gonna be like. So I think I glanced at it and it was like, maybe rain. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know what? Take a plastic sheet with you. If it starts to drizzle, I can throw that over the equipment and climb under, pack everything up and just get out of there. You know what I mean? And I was on my own. And of course I get there, and as soon as I set everything up, it starts pissing down. Like absolutely pouring down. Pouring. So I have all the equipment covered in big plastic sheets. At least I was smart enough to bring those. And yeah, so I'm gonna ride it out and wait a little while and hope it stops. I must be out of my mind. Still in the park, under a fucking plastic tarp with all the gear after it pissed down. Oh my god. What a nightmare. Well, you know, protect the gear. That's all that matters, right? Unless I suffocate first. Made it home. Everything intact. Soaking wet. Holy shit. I have one word. I'm powerless. There's two. It's actually three. There's always tomorrow. Right? Oh my god. And I waited. It would like rain for hours. And I just thought, right, I'm going to have to try and, you know, take everything apart and put it away and then get the hell out of there. And it led up for like 5 minutes. And I started like taking the camera apart, taking it, like, oh my God, quick, pack it. I was covered in mud. I was like covered in leaves, just a mess. Yeah, and I gave Wilhelmina back her key a couple of days later. And I said, you know, I might have to come back in here and shoot a couple more little bits and pieces. She's like, okay, no problem. Like, she's just a lovely lady. So if any of you are out and about in Manhattan and you're in the corner of LaGuardia and Houston Street, check it out. It's called the Time Landscape Park. Yeah, it's fascinating.